Hey guys, Paul here. So today I wanted to talk about the idea of Yu-Gi-Oh players having Stockholm syndrome. And I think that this is a super relevant thing because it kind of encompasses all of the different, complaints and dissatisfactions that we oftentimes talk about within the Yu-Gi-Oh space. Is Konami doing a bad job managing the game, the power creep, the price of cards, ban lists, products, whatever. So I just had a lot of thoughts on it. I wanted to get them all out there. I know I haven't made one of these videos in a little bit of time. I'm actually feeling kind of under the weather today, but I'm here and I'm recording and I'm going to talk and hopefully you guys will also chime in with your own opinions. And excuse me if I get a little bit incoherent. I'm not feeling the best, but we're here. So, what is Stockholm Syndrome exactly? Well, I'm not, maybe like an expert. So my description would basically just be Stockholm Syndrome is this idea that, you have been sort of taken captive and your captor or, your kidnapper or whatever, maybe your abuser even, has, you've been with them for so long that you begin to rationalize the situation that you're in and maybe even sympathize with said captor or kidnapper. So in a real world relationship that can look a certain type of way, but as it relates to Yu-Gi-Oh, it basically means, okay, Konami maybe is doing a bad job with the ban list, but we just kind of rationalize it as, well, that's just how the game is. Or cards cost $150, right? This new Charmy card or Fiendsmith card or Dominus Impulse costs a bunch of money, you need them to play. Well, that's just how the game is, tough luck, deal with it. We've all been there, that sort of thing. You'll hear people sometimes excusing these common criticisms of Konami with just like, that's how Yu-Gi-Oh is, deal with it, it's been that way forever, get used to it. And to be clear, I have sort of used the joke of Stockholm Syndrome before, right? And that's the thing, it's usually just said like somewhat in jest, right? Like Yu-Gi-Oh players just kind of getting, beaten and abused and battered by Konami, but they still stick with this game. And, so it's something that I have certainly said before, but I've been thinking more about it lately, and I'm starting to feel like, no, that's not quite right. So basically, do I think that Yu-Gi-Oh has a lot of issues that need to be fixed? Certainly, definitely, 100%. I'm not fully satisfied with really anything in this game exactly, right? Like anything could always be a little bit better. Maybe packs could have better pull rates or have the mixed rarity system. Maybe ban lists could, have descriptions of why things were hit or maybe more communication around it. There's all kinds of things that I'm like unhappy with. But I think that to call it Stockholm Syndrome, the fact that we all still play Yu-Gi-Oh sort of regardless of the issues at place, I don't think is actually maybe a fair assessment of the situation. Because Stockholm Syndrome sort of suggests that, you almost you sympathize and you begin to almost enjoy maybe the abusive relationship. Or if not enjoy it, you get to a point where you're just like, well, this is how it goes, and really it's not so bad, and they have a good reason to act this way, and that sort of thing. The thing is, I don't feel like Yu-Gi-Oh players are actually like that. We still play Yu-Gi-Oh, but I don't think it's out of sympathy for Konami. I really genuinely don't think that. I think that people play Yu-Gi-Oh because they like Yu-Gi-Oh and because it's fun, and because they can see, a really brilliant and enjoyable game, perhaps underneath the layers of dissatisfying muck. So what do I mean by that? Well, you could say that, well, people are just choosing to buy these super expensive cards, and that's what enables Konami to continue these printing practices and blah, 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 blah. And that's how we have like these expensive cards. But the thing is, most Yu-Gi-Oh players that I meet don't actually have these expensive cards. We are certainly dissatisfied with them, right? Like I don't have a playset of Charmies, I have no intention of buying them. But it's not gonna like stop me from playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And I'm also not going to buy them. I think that if like every Yu-Gi-Oh player on the planet just, decided to concede and like buy all of these super expensive cards, I think that would be Stockholm Syndrome. But really only a small subset of players actually invest in these cards and are like okay with it. And that's the super competitive crowd who need them to compete. The thing is though, I don't think that even they are experiencing Stockholm Syndrome. I think that they're just satisfying their desire to win and be able to play. I don't think that they're doing it as sort of as a type of forgiveness to Konami or to support Konami directly. I think they're just doing it to support themselves. They're aware of what the prices are, and they're making their own independent decision to buy those cards or obtain them in whatever way they do. And similarly, on the casual end, we still complain about the things that Konami does, right? Like when we express dissatisfaction when cards are expensive. We're not, giving Konami a pass on it. We also just don't buy the cards, right? Like if you can't afford it, you just don't buy it. You can still play Yu-Gi-Oh! Most people at your local card shop are not going to actually have a playset of Molcharmies. Maybe a few exceptions in the more like competitive sort of areas and regions, but like generally people just don't buy the cards. So to me, that doesn't look like Stockholm Syndrome or sort of being a slave to the captor. I think that it's just being dissatisfied with the thing that you like, but still liking the thing. And that's that bit of nuance that I feel sometimes is missing, is that it's not like a black and white issue of, you have to either love everything that Yu-Gi-Oh does or hate everything that Yu-Gi-Oh does. I think that it's totally possible to just play the game, enjoy it, build decks you like, and compete and just try your best and be unhappy with certain things not changing or whatever, right? Like, take the ban list, for instance. So the ban list, comes out every few months, and we don't get dates from the ban list. We also don't get descriptions on why things were hit on the ban list. These are two things that I know a lot of people really, really want. They want Konami to give like hard dates on ban lists again. They don't right now. And also, people would like to maybe hear some insight into why certain cards were hit. But despite all that, we still play. Does that mean that we are rationalizing Konami's decisions? No. Every time banlist season comes around, in fact increasingly so, people get quite vocal about the fact that we really need to sort of change this whole process. But we play because Yu-Gi-Oh is fun. I don't think that we're playing, again, because like Konami's making the best ban lists ever or to validate their decision with like how they choose to handle it. We're playing Yu-Gi-Oh for Yu-Gi-Oh. And people abide by the ban list, but it's not like you really have to. I mean, you can also choose to just play with your friends and not follow the ban list at all. But also I think that for most players, we've sort of even reached a point where the ban list itself isn't all that important to most people. Like I feel like I'm hearing more of the conversation these days shift from just, the ban list sucks or whatever to people just kind of want more accessible cards, right? Like it feels like the pricing and rarity conversation, at least where I'm observing it, has somewhat overshadowed the like idea of perfect game balance. Like we kind of just accept that power creep is what it is, but we just want to be able to get the cards more easily. And the fact that we still want these things, the fact that we still kind of demand them from Konami, whether they give them or not, that's I guess what I'm getting at, is that we play Yu-Gi-Oh because we like Yu-Gi-Oh. I don't ever really feel like I'm being held captive when I play Yu-Gi-Oh. I don't like, the power level of the game all the time. I don't like how, things can play and like turn out. But I never would say that I am like hate playing Yu-Gi-Oh, if that makes sense. And I don't think that many people are. I mean, I'll say that I've met people where I do get the impression that maybe they would genuinely benefit from a break with the game or a break from the game. Like that's possible. Like you can definitely get like burned out of it. But I think that just having some complaints is totally healthy. It's totally fine to not be like sunshine and rainbows about the thing that you play just because like you play it. I think that if you choose to be optimistic about stuff, that's different, right? Like that's, to me, you can acknowledge that maybe packs are a little bit too, or cards are a little bit too expensive, or the ban list isn't perfect, but you can be optimistic and still just be like, okay, well, it's fine. They'll fix it next time, or the card will be reprinted later, so it'll be okay. That's like one way to handle it. You can complain about it and be dissatisfied, but just choose to not engage. It's almost like kind of like voting with your wallet. There are some people who don't buy singles because they can't afford them. There's some people who just choose to play on dueling book or simulators because they don't want to, buy the card or support the Konami printing practices. It's totally fine and valid. I don't think that in either case, like any of these groups of people are really experiencing Stockholm Syndrome. I think that they like Yu-Gi-Oh because it is good and is fun. It's just like a flawed game somewhat and has some issues. So, yeah, I mean, I guess that's pretty much it. I hope I was making like a decent point here, which is just that like calling Yu-Gi-Oh players sort of like these victims or, like describing it as Stockholm Syndrome, fun joke, totally get that. I'm not saying that it's not, funny on the surface and has some, degree of truth. But I do think that as Yu-Gi-Oh players, I can speak for myself, but I think that I speak for a lot of people when I say Yu-Gi-Oh is like, it's still a fun game. We wouldn't be here if we didn't get some joy out of it. So it's not like, Konami can really dictate your happiness with this game. They can do things that upset you a little bit or you're unhappy with, but they can't, like take Yu-Gi-Oh and the things you love fully away from you. it's all really up to you how much you put into this game, and like also how much you get out of it. So the prompt, I guess, for today, if we wanted to discuss this in the comments, is: do you feel like you're a captive audience in Yu-Gi-Oh? Captive in the sense that there's some Stockholm syndrome, some abusive relationship going on, right? Do you feel that Konami is just abusing players? Or do you feel that despite maybe your criticisms of it, you're still enjoying yourself and you don't feel that you're like losing anything for it? Because I certainly fall into that camp, I think, where like I can enjoy Yu-Gi-Oh in spite of my discontent with some parts of it. Because Yu-Gi-Oh is still really fun and I still really like it, and I don't think I'm really gonna be like playing any other card games seriously anytime soon, because Yu-Gi-Oh just scratches an itch that it's really tough to scratch with anything else. Anyways, okay, that's gonna be it. I really have got to take some medicine to lay down. It's getting pretty bad. So I will be reading and responding to as many comments as I can, or at least hearting them or something, just so you know I saw it. I want to hear, is this Yu-Gi-Oh Stockholm syndrome thing, like a real thing, or is it just, maybe just a joke? I don't know. How much truth is there to it? All right, I've gone on long enough. I'll see you guys in the next one. Best turn.